Next up, we have Josh from Sundae Labs. Josh, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm Josh. I'm a software engineer at Sundae Labs, and I'm excited to talk about Cardano client diversity and where we're at right now. So, the biggest question we need to consider when we're talking about client diversity or node diversity is really what happens when 100% of a network depends on a single code base. And we can look at some historical examples of that. We keep talking about going back 10 years, so we can go back 10 years to a different chain and saw what happened over there. So back in 2016, some of you in this room might remember this. I think there might be at least one person here who definitely does. Ethereum experienced what they call the Shanghai DDoS attack. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but back at the time, about 88% of the network was running one node called Geeth, and a malicious attacker, the morning of a big Ethereum conference, decided to exploit a bug they found in Geeth to attack the network. Fortunately, they had a very, very minority client called the parity client that managed to, it did not have the bug and managed to keep the network alive, although block production was ridiculously slow at the time, and users reported outages on their end applications for several weeks after this. And actually, they had to have 2 hard forks to clean up after this, and then some further sort of off-chain collaboration work to make sure that all of the nodes were in the right place. So this was a really devastating attack. They did have 2 clients at the time, but a large majority, unfortunately, was hit. Also, we don't have to go too far away from home to see what could happen in this situation. Last year, many of you probably remember this, but in November, somebody seemingly accidentally submitted a malformed transaction on the testnet. It caused an issue. It found a bug in an old node version. That was quickly fixed and released node 10.5.2. Unfortunately, the next day, we had a malicious actor copy that attack on mainnet, which caused a temporary fork. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. I actually recommend everybody go read the CTO of Sundae Labs, Pi Lanningham. He wrote a very, very good blog article about this and what it means going forward for Cardano. But after a lot of great work and collaboration from founding entities, companies, and people on Cardano, we got enough SPOs to update to the correct latest version, and we got to see Ouroboros organically heal the network, which is actually pretty special. We had no hard forks. We had no off-chain work to clean it up afterwards. It was pretty spectacular. So I keep talking about node diversity or client diversity, but we have to really define what this means because all of these terms have different definitions floating around. So to me, I would say that node diversity means having multiple independent, interoperable implementations of a single blockchain specification. So in other words, basically, you have all of these nodes running the same protocol with different code, which is very important because otherwise they share vulnerabilities. Oftentimes, they're in different languages, which lends themselves to different design choices. But most importantly, they all have to conform with each other. They all have to agree on what blocks are valid and what blocks aren't valid, and they should conform to our specification. So with that in mind, the big question is, why do we care about node diversity? Well, we already saw how node diversity can help protect the network against bugs, malicious actors, or other faults in the network. That's a very big part of it. But another one that I like to talk about is the resilience against organizational risks. So anybody that's worked in open source software knows that funding, interest, focus, any of those things are real issues that can hit open source software development pretty bad. But if we have a bunch of different companies all building nodes at the same time, if one of those teams were to lose focus or stop building for whatever reason, Cardano continues to succeed. We also happen to get a lot of new innovations through node diversity, both through competition, because all of these nodes are working to solve problems in novel ways, because they want to be the best node out there, but also through collaboration, and I think that's really important to highlight here. People come together with different experiences and different perspectives, and that lends new and interesting solutions that couldn't be met without that collaboration. So right now on Cardano, we have the current sort of canonical node, which is the Haskell node by IOG. But we have a lot of different nodes in development as well across a lot of different languages. We have Amaru in Rust, which is the one that I contribute to personally. But then we have other nodes in C#, TypeScript, Go, Scala, and C++, and those are the ones I know of. I'm sure there's actually a lot more out there that are still in progress in different sort of stages of development. So I'm going to quickly tell you a little bit about Amaru, because that's the project I spend most of my time working on. As I mentioned, Amaru is a Cardano node implemented in Rust, actually funded by the Cardano community. It was, I think, one of the first treasury withdrawals approved on Cardano was the funding of the work for Amaru. Number one, yes. I was pretty sure I didn't want to say that and get it wrong. So it's pretty spectacular to see this work. It truly is grassroots. It's from our community. And that brings us to who it is, which is also very grassroots. Amaru is a member project of Pragma, and Pragma is a member-based, nonprofit open source association made up of a few companies on Cardano that work on building infrastructure. But of course, Amaru itself has a lot of contributors from all over the ecosystem, and we welcome anybody to come in, help out with it. It is open source, of course. And the other question we get a whole lot is, why do we choose Rust? There's a lot of languages out there. Why pick Rust? Well, it has strong foundations. It was created and is consistently funded by Mozilla. It has, I think, 20 plus full-time engineers on it, and then, of course, the ecosystem around it as well. And excitingly, it has open governance through an RFC process, so you people that are using it can contribute to the language as well. It's also very attractive to developers. It was, I think, ranked #1 as the most exciting new technology. Admired technology might be the word that Stack Overflow uses. Every year on the Stack Overflow survey since 2023. And it's also building a lot of blockchains. Midnight uses Rust, Solana, Near, let's see. There's plenty of them. Polkadot uses Rust. So it's very familiar to a lot of blockchain developers already, and they can come over and help out on Cardano. And it's also relevant to Cardano. We have the second biggest ecosystem already well established, outside of Haskell, of course. And really, there's a lot of demand for Cardano development with Rust. So we're excited to be able to bring that to Cardano. I'll very quickly go over some technical features of Cardano. We have very low resource requirement, running right now with about 1 gigabyte of RAM. We're actually able to run on Raspberry Pis, which is a fun Cardano tradition. And we gave out Raspberry Pis with Amaru that are syncing mainnet at the Cardano Summit. So those are on people's desks all over the world. Another benefit of building after the Haskell node has done a lot of really, really great work is that we're able to learn from the experience of the Haskell node. And one of the things we've done, which is coming soon to the Haskell node, but is already in Amaru, is on-disk ledger storage, which is part of why we get our memory usage so low. We also maintain targets to ARM, RISC-V, and WASM, which are funny tech words, but basically it means we can build mobile clients, we could build browser clients, and we can build a lot of zero-knowledge stuff with Amaru already. And what I'm personally most excited about is the fact that Amaru is not just building a node. We're actually focusing on building libraries that we combine to make a node. And those libraries have already proven themselves really useful. Back in that Cardano attack we talked about before, Sam, who's sitting right here in the front row, and I collaborated on a tool that found the point of divergence in the network. So it was able to figure out exactly where it was happening, so we could figure out what was happening, and then it followed both the chains to store the blocks to make sure we weren't losing any data. So Amaru's already been really helpful before it started producing blocks, but the exciting number that gets everybody really, really hopeful about it is our current target is that we're gonna have a block producing node ready to go by Q2 of 2026, which is very soon. And so how does Amaru generally fit into our broader Cardano ecosystem? We started hosting node diversity workshops in partnership with IOG. So we've had 2 so far, 1 in Paris and 1 in Toulouse. Generally, these are opportunities to bring together developers from all kinds of nodes, all in one place, and we can talk about what Cardano really is. So we talk about the specifications, we talk about conformance tests, we talk about all the things that define Cardano outside of the Haskell node. We've also care a lot about making sure that other developers can follow along with what we've done and make it a little bit easier for them to come after us. So we spend a lot of time contributing to the Cardano Blueprint project, which is a really great project also by IOG, meant to serve as an open source reference guide for Cardano. So any questions you have about the protocol, you go there. We've also found some bugs in the Haskell node. Nothing that significant, but they've all been identified, fixed, or triaged, and that's been really fun to help clean up as we go. And then what I like to talk about the most is the big picture of node diversity. What are the big pillars that are going to be important for a multi-client future? Well, first of all, I think we get to true decentralization. Oftentimes when people talk about decentralization in a network, they talk about the block producing and the validation, which is very important. That's very important. But we're actually building towards a future where the software doing that work itself is also decentralized. And then Cardano becomes truly a shared protocol owned by everybody, which is pretty awesome. Second, I think we get to see new protocol improvements and evolutions. As we've seen already, more eyes means more bugs found. That's always a good thing. But also, having different teams, we're able to prototype new features very quickly, which means more iterations, everything like that. As I mentioned, we're hoping to also lower barriers to entry. We're trying to meet developers where they are instead of having them come to us, give them the languages that they know. And multi-client solutions are generally what enterprises use for their backend. And so having no diversity in Cardano gives enterprises the opportunity to do that themselves. But the big idea I kind of want to leave you guys with is that no diversity isn't slowing down Cardano development, which is sort of often what you hear. I actually think it's expanding it. We're seeing teams that may have disagreements on a lot or a little, working independently but towards a common goal that is that of a stronger Cardano. The community is using on-chain governance to fund its own infrastructure development. And I think we're really witnessing via Cardano what decentralized development should and does look like in an open source world. Thank you, everybody.